So I am engineering manager, and actually I have that pandemic, actually not that pandemic scale, the scale before that to thank for my job, because I made that through a connection here, through our jobs board, and I got a job there, and then got promoted to manage the team I'm on. Speaking of hiring and promoting, we are hiring. So let me know if you're looking for something. And variety of openings, and as far as I'm concerned, everybody can be remote, because otherwise it just doesn't make sense. All right. Now, Nextcloud. This is about having your own services with your own data, and I'll come back to that theme probably twice or three times, as we go through. So first of all, it's a multi-featured service where you can store, control, and share your own data. So instead of having some cloud provider that has that, where you are the product, or your eyeballs and your data is the product, you can have this all on a service that you control, so that you don't have to worry about being mined. If you have things like I've got children to think about, and I don't want children's stuff up everywhere for somebody else to be going through. I don't want my medical information going up and going through somebody else's database. Heck, I don't want what I'm doing for the conferences going up through somebody else's database unless I've said yes, right? So I've been very interested in Nextcloud because of that, and making moderate use of it. One of the cool things is sync and share file types. Now, I bring this up at the beginning because Nextcloud has actually been working on a protocol that other services can provide, whether that be other free software projects or other commercial products. And so they've gotten that through as a standard so that they can work with other things. So for instance, working with SyncThing and with other products, so that if I've got Nextcloud but I want to share something with somebody, a lot of data, then they don't have to use Nextcloud to sync with it. They can use another service to sync with it. Or if I want to sync to a device that I don't have Nextcloud on for some reason, I don't want to run the Nextcloud client, I can use a different client. Which is awesome. It's one of the things I like about free software. What I like about, we were talking about it a second ago about the Fediverse. One of the things I like about that, and IRC I've been using for years, I get to choose my client. Or clients. I use different clients depending on what I'm trying to do. So I really like organizations that go through and work on standards and protocols so that I can choose what it is I want to do with it. Now, the main things that I think about are photos and documents and phone address book. So if you give me your phone number, I don't want to give your data to some other cloud provider as well. So it's nice that I can go through and do the backups on my own service. Some features that I use a lot, shared document editing, web forms, we'll get into some of these. Collabora Online Office, the provider I have provides a Collabora instance for me as well, so they've gone through and built that in. I've heard that's kind of tricky to get working, but for me it was, hey, turn this on, and the next day I had it. It was really simple. Kanban board, I've been using a lot, and then some new things for me are RSS feed reader. I only use that a little bit. And the Fediverse, they're still working on, so it's still getting there. But I'm glad to see them again working with standards and working to that for that within the community. Now, speaking of working within the community, we were talking earlier, but Jose of Nextcloud is giving a talk right now, and this was him turning his back on me as he learned that we were speaking at the same time. No, this was Jose and Charlotte at the Nextcloud booth earlier today, and Joseph was helping somebody out, but I was like, oh, this is just too perfect. I have to put this in the presentation. So yeah, there we go. Now, how am I using it for conferences? Shared documents, I've already mentioned. Shared spreadsheets, I'm not a spreadsheet person, but I've been using a lot of spreadsheets and using formulas in them and doing all those spreadsheety things and learning how to do that. Web forms. So I mentioned the Open Source Career Day is tomorrow. I'm using a web form for people to be able to sign up for consultations to get resume reviews and career guidance, and re-careering if you're not in technology and you've got experience in a different field and you want to come over. This is to help you come over and take what your previous experience, life and work, and figure out how that can help you develop into a technology career. Kanban board, I've been So the open source career day has had a lot of things for me to do, and rather than having a pile of sticky notes to track it all, I have used the heck out of the Kanban board to track all the stuff I've got going. I also use it for password sharing. So there's other password sharing services out there. Some of them are free software. Nextcloud has a couple that are available. I think one is being mothballed at this point. But it was nice for me to be able to, for our social media for Siegel, I took the account information, put it up in Nextcloud. People already have a Nextcloud account, so I could share it off, and we have a shared password that we can use. I also use this for personal stuff. If I set something up for the family, they can hop on Nextcloud and grab it, and I don't have to explain yet another service to them. And then file drops. So this is actually really important for us for like the career stuff, because when we're doing resume reviews, I need to be able to get somebody's resume, and they might not want to just put that on a website and say, here you go. So this gives them a way to securely upload it to us, so we can make it available to our consultants, but without them having to expose it to the internet in general. It is basically a write-only link, so they can't read anything from there. All they can do is write to it. When you first log into Nextcloud, they've added a dashboard, and when I say added, it was just several years ago, but and this is uncustomized what they come out of the box, but you can add things. So it's got the files you've been using in the events, but you can add like your RSS feed up here, and you can add different applets or however they're calling them. I mostly ignore it and go straight to the things I'm trying to do because I'm using it for specific tasks. I mentioned photos, so I use it for my phone backups, and with that, if you just back them up, so for two things. So first of all, when you do the backups of your pictures and your videos, you set it up, and it's actually two different syncs. One does photos, and one does videos. I haven't figured out a way to just, all the things I took with my camera, please upload those, right? But you can set those up. And then the default is that it syncs them in place, but then you also still run into errors with file syncing, right? And the same thing with the proprietary services. I've run into that all over the place. I live in a more wide open desert than what we're living in now, with even less bandwidth. So you end up with drops and stuff all the time. So what I use is they have a mechanism where you say, when you sync it, move it into the Nextcloud app, move it over into that folder, and put it under year and month and day, or year and month, so I can know it's back. When it's moved over there, I know that they've got a copy of it, right? And so then I can go through and delete things from there, just free up space. Delete them locally. Instead of delete, you can delete locally on the phone, or you can delete overall, which will completely wipe it out in your Nextcloud instance. But I can delete locally and know that I've got a copy up on my cloud, right? And free up space on my phone. And then I can, from the Nextcloud instance, I can sync that back down to my desktop, so I also have a local copy that I've got somewhere else. Because even though it's my cloud, don't trust the cloud to keep your data when you want it. Don't trust them to delete it when you want them to get rid of it. So for instance, if I go through and accidentally say delete from the entire thing instead of just from my local device, which I have done once or twice, Nextcloud makes a backup of it, and I have to go in and tell it to go delete there as well. So there is a fallback if you accidentally delete something you wanted to keep. All right, and then there you go. So photos, it's a web interface, shows you pictures. I mentioned Career Day, so somebody had pointed out, hey, we should put the URL for signing up for the CR code for signing up for consultation sessions. So I'll leave this for a second. If you want to sign up for consultation tomorrow, follow one of these QR codes. When you upload, it defaults to instant uploads, which I don't think I have on this account, for doing the upload, but you can change what folder you want it to upload to. And then, as I say, it'll go through and upload it if you tell it to by year and by month, so you can organize them. It doesn't do, I haven't found a way to do it by day, because for those of us that take a lot of pictures at things, by month can be very long. And it does, because it's using name sorting, so it sorts by image and video. All right. And then the pictures that were down below, those were the default on the system. They give you a few things, including this intro to Nextcloud video. Now for file sharing, you can go through and say you've got a file or a directory that you want to share with people. So if you share the directory, all the files underneath that directory get shared. If you want to share those, you can say, give me a sharing link, and then you can provide that link to other people. And we'll get to what the different permissions are for those, or here, right? So the default is that it gives somebody read-only access to the directory. But you can also password protect it, so they have to have both the link and a password. You can set it up for expiration. So for instance, the forms, the files that I have that we're using for the career day, I've set to expire tomorrow after the event, so because they don't need to be hanging around after that. And as I said, we can do Dropboxes with upload-only links. Files. It's a web tree with files in there. You can organize in a couple different ways. I just leave it in default listing. But I wanted to point out here, so in the interface, when we're sharing a link, we can change, as I say, defaults to read-only. You can allow read and write, so that allows somebody with that link to change. You can allow write-only, and then as I said, we have password protection and expiration. And the thing is, I can set multiple links. So for the directory where I've set up, or for a file, let's say I've got the budget file, so I'm running the finance committee for Siegel. Well, I need multiple people within Siegel to be able to see our budget and be able to see what our books are like, but I don't need them all to be able to write to it, change it. So I can provide one link that is read-only, so that those that need to audit it can get in and audit it, and then I can set one that's write-only, or read-write, different link to the same place, so that those of us that need to be able to update and maintain our budget can get in and make those changes. But they're going to the same file. All right. Mentioned photos and videos, an instant upload, year and month. Yeah, so I already went through all those things. Address book. So I can also upload the address book from the phone. Then there's also a sync for notes. So if you want to be able to take notes, that'll get automatically synced up to Nextcloud, your Nextcloud instance. Passwords I mentioned. And then another one is phone location. So if you want to, like, if somebody steals your phone, you want to be able to find it, that seems like a really cool service. But I want me to be able to find it, not some random corporation to be able to find it, right? So we can go through and set that upload to go to my Nextcloud instance, so I can then track that. And I can also go through and, I presume, I actually don't play with this, but I should be able to go delete the data so it's not sitting around forever, you know. They don't need to know I was over there that last week, you know. This would also, you know, disclosure, obviously, if you set this up on somebody else's account, like you've setting things up for people in the family, that allows you to track other people. So, you know, be aware that if somebody's setting up here, there is a possibility of them being able to set up tracking stuff on your phone without your knowledge. So go look at what the Nextcloud instance on your phone is like. All right. Shared document editing. So Collabora Online so it's not the only way. Nextcloud has some inbuilt mechanisms. You can do Markdown. You can do a couple different file types. But with Collabora Online, you can get full Office suite. It's all web-based. You can have multiple people editing at the same time. You can have shared documents. So we use both documents and spreadsheet quite a bit. We don't really use presentation for the finance committee or even for the open source career day because we're not giving presentations during our meetings. So I haven't played with that, but it's there. But we do, as I say, we do use the document quite a bit. Mid-meeting, we're keeping notes. And then also using the spreadsheets, and it does the things. I can pull from one sheet to another sheet for data. That's one of the things I did for the career sign up, I have a sheet that's read-only, so well, I don't know if it's read-only, but I've told everybody to leave it alone. And then I'm pulling data in somewhere else. That way I can easily update the underlying sheet and then get the view that we want to have on the shared portion of it. And so I can use regular formulas with that. Then presentation, and then it also works in with other services. So Moodle is one that Moodle is for classroom management. So being able to use that for school stuff. Got a lot of use in 2020 suddenly. It became a very popular suite. And actually, I'm presuming it's becoming very popular in Germany right now. So we'll get to this later. But for the most part, Nextcloud is German. It's a free software community, people all over the world, but there's a strong core that's in Germany. And Germany has gone through and said that recently that the proprietary cloud services can't be holding all that student data. So they're probably looking at Moodle. When we first went into the pandemic, my kids' school was using Moodle for their stuff. So you can tie that into Nextcloud so you can have your sharing and all those tools, your document sharing and stuff, and all those tools within Moodle via Nextcloud. It also integrates with Big Blue Button for video conferencing. Web forms came up earlier. So standard forms say, hey, here's some information, and then give people an opportunity to put in. You could do short answer, long answer. You could do multiple selection. You can do radio buttons for one selection. Set up multiple pieces on there. The file goes into responses where you can see all of the responses collated, so you see all the responses to question 1, all the responses to question 2, or you can go through and see all the responses from the first person, all the responses from the second person, and so forth. And you can also export it, but it doesn't automatically update a spreadsheet. There are some web form services that will automatically update a spreadsheet. That is really convenient, I have to admit. We don't have that here. And that's why I said for those forms, I created a different sheet so that I can go through and do updates. I can come in and say, okay, like I need to do tonight, I've got an extra dozen people have signed up for the career counseling tomorrow. So I need to go through and get the new people, add them to the underlying sheet, and then that'll go through and get updated on the sheet that the counselors are using. It's not taking a whole lot of extra time, but it does take a little bit of extra time in order to do that. They keep doing updates. In fact, as of today, there's an update to the web forms. I'm not updating while I'm in the middle of using it for a conference, but there is an update to it, so they're constantly doing updates just like any other free software package, right? Or any other free software project that's getting heavy use. All right. Video chat. So when the pandemic started, I tried out several different free software video conferencing tools. I had a Nextcloud instance, so I tried that. It did not work well for me. It might be because the instance I have, I'm actually hosting it out of a company in Canada, so local calls are going pretty far for me. And I just gave it a basic try at the very beginning. I haven't played with it since then because I'd moved to other things. But just like those other things, I also know there have been updates to this over time. But one of the cool features with this is using WebRTC, like most of the other free software video conferencing tools we're using. But one of the cool things we're doing, and I believe Joe's created this, so I'll give him credit for this. I know he was the first person I saw talking about it. But it gives you a way to do video identification before share. So basically you start a video call with somebody, so you can see them and see that they're, it's not like in the movies where somebody's holding up the dead person. You go see who it is you're talking to, and verify that way, even though it's remote. And then you can share the link inside the call so that you know that you're sharing it just with the person that you're talking to, and it's an encrypted connection between the two. So I thought that was pretty cool. I have not seen anybody else advertising that. Could I figure out how to do that with other tools? Probably, but it was kind of cool that they created that as an actual service. So Pepper and Carrot, I got a mask here somewhere. Your Data, Your Cloud. This is out of Pepper and Carrot, episode 6, I think. Going to the Cloud City. Now, activity, as I mentioned, putting my data in into a proprietary cloud system. There are a lot of people that can be looking at that. They can be mining that for data, for marketing, for whatever it is that they want to know about me. This gives you an idea of how, seeing what it is. It's tracking your activity. So the things that you're doing. I'm not doing much on this particular account. I did not choose one that was really busy. With all of my, I don't want to share all my private data with the presentation either. So, but you can see what's going on, what you've been doing with your account. So if you remember, I did this thing last week, you can go look it up. But it also gives you a chance for me to see, just a really high level of the types of things that other groups might be tracking. So, all right. Now I mentioned it's your cloud, your data, but how, right? So it's a free software project. You can run your own instance. When I first started playing with Nextcloud, I installed it on a Raspberry Pi, ran it inside my home network, did not give it network access, or did not give the internet access to it, I suppose is really the way to put it, right? It was fairly easy to set up, apt get install, and off I went. I think I followed a how-to that helped me set up a couple of parameters and stuff, but it was pretty simple. Now you can also run it on somebody else's computer, and that's actually what I'm doing for my public instance. As I say, I'm paying a hosting company. I'll mention them later on. I've been happy with them. This is not like an ad for them, but I've been happy with them. I'll say that. But I went and looked at several different places that were hosting. In the year since I did that, there are even more companies that are going through and hosting for us. And they make it really easy to set up. There's a couple advantages to me. I don't have to track all the security updates. I don't have to be, making sure that they're, testing them and making sure they're working. I have done the updates. I've had one or two that didn't quite work right. One, I needed to redo it again, and it worked the second time. The other one, I emailed support and said, hey, this broke, and a couple hours later, it was fixed. And I was like, hey, that's awesome debugging, right? Somebody else gets to do it. So that's been working well for me. It also allows me to not have to provide as much customer support for my family because they can use the thing. So there's advantages to doing it that way. It's also rather inexpensive. So I am paying somebody, but it's not that expensive. Now, enterprise I put in here. So I'm small, for me and my family and the free software conferences that I'm helping on here. We've had at most a dozen people using my instance at any time. So hosting for that is not very difficult. But let's say you're a large organization, for instance, the German Lawyers Association, that all of the German lawyers belong to, that is using Nextcloud for all of their data, right? For their file store and stuff like that. That's probably not running on a Raspberry Pi. Lawyers tend to have really large documents. I don't know that they have a lot of data, but they use large formats and stuff, and they use a lot of them. So that's probably running on a larger system. Well, yes, it is. So they've gone through and contracted with Nextcloud to provide support. I don't think Nextcloud is running the instance for them. I think they're running on their own private storage or their private cloud. But then the Nextcloud is coming and helping them with configuration management, things like that. Also helping if they've got feature requests, stuff like that. And we'll get to privacy and some other things a little bit. So you can, if you're a large company, you can run your own, and you can hire out for services if you want to get support. Or it's free software. You can hire your own team to go through and maintain it for you. You can run it on your own hardware, get some space in the DC, throw some boxes in there, set your own system up. You can run it you can run your cloud in the cloud. You can set it up on somebody's droplet and things like that, right? And it's for me the key there is we're running at different sizes, right? So I'm running it as a single user or just a small entity versus very large entities that are using it, and it scales for that. I haven't tested it at the very large level. I know it's working, but I don't have personal experience with that. But I know that they are doing some great things, and those enterprise customers are helping pay for the support and pay for the development that we're getting the advantage of. So we have a lot of people are donating their time, which is free software, to go through and develop Nextcloud. But we also have paid developers that work for the company, paid people that are doing customer support, paid people that are doing marketing, things like that. So that's really coming from the enterprise class level of people. And it's the same software base. So when I go through an apt-get install, I'm getting the same software base that those big entities are. They probably have a larger MySQL instance and more redundancy on their stuff than I set up on my Raspberry Pi, but hey. All right. Now, I mentioned there are other pieces in here. So for me, for my own personal use, I don't have to worry about all this stuff, right? Now, for a large entity, for a legal association in Europe, they probably need to worry about the GDPR, right? If you're a large entity in the US and perhaps you have customers in California or you're based in California, you've got the CCPA. So thank you to California, by the way, for doing that and looking out for privacy for the rest of us. And then you've also got HIPAA. I don't know, I haven't gone and looked at what they're doing about the new Vermont privacy law and the new Colorado privacy law, and we've had a couple of other privacy laws in the US. But they've been doing a lot of things to work on being compliant with the different privacy laws, which is great because it reduces the amount of worry we have. I'm not your lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, I'm definitely not your lawyer, I'm not my lawyer, I'm not anybody's lawyer. I'm not your privacy expert, but for me, one of the nice things about Nextcloud is I've got this and I can run it and I've got my own, I can control all the services, I can control all the data in there, but I can also pay Nextcloud for support. So I've got somebody to help if we're having privacy issues, or if I've got concerns with that. So I've got best of both worlds, right? And you can lean into either one as much as you want. You can lean into self-hosting as much as you want, or you can lean into enterprise support as much as you want, depending on what your needs are for your company. All right. Now, I mentioned I've been using the Kanban board quite a bit. For the career day, we've just had a lot of things going on to put that on. We've got a lot of different activities tomorrow. So I have been using the heck out of this in order to track what I'm doing. You can create your own columns. I just created some default ones and threw things around. Somebody might be mentioned on the slide. You can... it's got a web interface. We can share this so I can have multiple people using the board. Actually, the way I do things, my phone has a different account than my normal account so that it's limited. It's using an app token. So I share this with my phone's account if I want the phone to have access to it. I don't share it with the phone if I don't want the phone to have access to it. You can, again, be using these collaboratively. And then for those of you that know me, I believe it's the next slide. Oh, no, I got one more. And then you've got a task list. So it's again, the Kanban board, but done as a task list. I believe you can throw other things in there outside the Kanban board, but honestly, I don't use this. But I wanted to point it out that's there for those that might. And then this was the selling point for me. So NC-DECGET is a great command line tool that it took me like 5 minutes to write because you can see up there what it is. So the first piece, all I did really with this, the only reason I did that as a command was to simplify the example in the second window. So the first one, I'm setting up where the API is. I'm setting up the host. I'm setting up the URL in the host. And then I'm setting up NC-DECGET as just an alias to a curl. Right? I'm hitting the API and grabbing data, and I'm saying, give that to me as JSON. Now, I will have to admit, I have not been a fan of JSON for many years. But then recently I found JQ, which allows me to parse JSON from the command line. And it's like grep, sed, and awk all wrote in together for JSON. And like, this is usable now. So I can pull the data out of DEC, the Kanban board, throw it into JSON, and go through and manipulate it so I can go see what's on my board. I can go through and update things on my board. I can close things. I can move it from one column to another column. Now, I've got to go through and do the work to do that, but those of you that know me know I love the command line and being able to do everything there, even if it's much, 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 much harder and slower. So to me, this was the thing. I still don't use it as much as I need to because it's been taken, but I love it. But again, this is part of the thing with the free software. We want to build tools people can use. We're not building an API and then locking you out later on once it becomes popular, or years later letting somebody else buy it and say, oh, we're going to start charging you to use the API. No, it's your stuff. Use the API if that's what you want to do. Create your own tools, right? Pay somebody else to go create some tools. Find some tools that somebody else created, and you're like, hey, this is what I want. This is awesome, right? So I love that ability with Nextcloud, and I was created this for a JQ presentation, and I was so glad when I found the Nextcloud examples that I could use for it. All right, we've also got an RSS feed reader. So in this case, I've subscribed to one of my Mastodon accounts, so you can be getting updates there. You can see that I'm doing some promotion for a talk that you missed earlier. If you weren't there, at least one of you was there. The presenters in the room, for those of you that weren't here earlier. But you can go watch it online later on. Still, Anyway, so you can do it. But for those of you that like feed readers, I keep seeing posts and been seeing this for years and years about RSS is dead. No, it's not. We're using it. It's available. It's great, and I'm glad we've got it there. I want a command line tool instead of a web-based tool, but I'm glad they have this here and they make it fairly easy. It was simple to set this up to subscribe to that. It was very, very easy to use. And then the other thing is, if you want to, you're pulling all that in to an instance that you're running. So again, somebody else isn't looking at what news you're reading, right? If you don't want people to know that you're really, really into sparkle ponies that wear platform shoes, they don't need to know, right? If you do want to know, you can post about it on the Fediverse. All right. But wait, there is more. This is where I get out the can of hairspray. No, okay, don't do that. But we do have apps. So Nextcloud is a free software tool. You can basically get plugins, apps. They have a little app. It's not a store. It's a repository where you can go through and get stuff. So I mentioned being able to use Collabora Office. There's an app for being able to do that tie-in. There's an app for being able to do the tie-in to Big Blue Button and Moodle and things like that. The Nextcloud deck, the Kanban board is an app as well. It's not in the default install. So you can go grab things and install them. You can update them independently of your Nextcloud instance. Beware that sometimes not all apps support all versions of Nextcloud, but it'll tell you. Say, hey, by the way, this update you're looking at isn't compatible with the one you're moving to. Or if you're upgrading your version of Nextcloud and it'll let you know that, hey, these apps that you have installed aren't compatible with the new version yet. So you can decide whether or not you want to do that upgrade. And you've got actually quite a few. I spent one night and started browsing through them. And after a while, I got tired of browsing through them because it was way too much. So you can go through and search. They do have bundles, so if you want to say, okay, if I'm interested in this thing, then you can go grab them as a bundle, and it'll help you go through and play with it. I haven't done much with it myself, but it's nice. I should say I haven't done much with it myself. I have trolled through, just read through here, and basically looked for recommendations based on, it's like, do I want those apps as well, based on topic. But you can also go through and look at apps based on theme. So this is Office apps that you can get. I mentioned the Collabora Online is here somewhere. The Notes app as well. There's a deck for the Kanban board. So that's the Office stuff. And then we have organization apps was another one. I just grabbed a couple of examples. On the left, you can see there's a whole bunch of other security and tasks and whatever else that they've got in there. And if you don't see a topic or see a subject that you think should be in there, it's free software. ask them to add that. Say, hey, I want to have an app that helps me with dietary, needs, whatever, right? And here's these different apps that would work for that topic, and see if they'll do it. All right. Now, some drawbacks. It's free software. Just like any other large project, it is not perfect. Especially any larger project is not done perfectly the way I want it to be done, where I have the convenience of a web interface, but all on the command line, because that would be perfect. No? But they give me a good combination of that. One of the big drawbacks for me is that when you do the file sharing, I was talking about, you can do different links. They all have a token, so it's not a human readable file name. I haven't found a way to go through and say, okay, I know, but for this one, can you just give something to people that humans can understand, please? Doesn't have that. But again, you're going through and creating a whole bunch of different links into files and directories, and you can have multiple going to the same place. They need to have unique names, right? So I can understand how that's in there, and it's not any different than most of the other file sharing services. I like human readable stuff. And then, as I said, web forms don't auto-update the spreadsheets. I've got to work around. It takes a little bit of extra work, but it's not I haven't found it to be horrendous thus far. I also don't do it a lot, right? If I was doing this every day, that would be somewhat aggravating. All right. Now, how does it stay free? Nextcloud is released as free software. It's a web-based tool. If you have, we've got different licenses available to us in free software. Not all of them stay free. They can become proprietary tools. And for the most part, they have a web gap, where if it's done as a web service, the license doesn't require that the underlying code that's being used for that service stay free and available to the people using the service. And this is where the AGPL v3 comes in, even with a missing V. Anyway, the AGPL 3, this was a idea that, I don't know that Bradley was the first to come up with it, but he was certainly one of the first to push for it, Bradley Kuhn, talking about having a clause in there that says that if this is done as a web service, that you have to have the source code be available as well. And so Nextcloud is using that. It's basically GPL v3, but with that extra Affero clause in there. So that means that if somebody goes through and sets up a commercial service with Nextcloud, like the host that I'm using, they also have to provide the source code for me. So if they've been going through and making proprietary changes, legally, they have to be able to give me the changes that they've been making. We could talk to Bradley about GPL enforcement and whether or not that actually happens in practice, but by the license, they have to do that. And I like that. I want to make sure that I know what the underlying code is on the service, especially if I'm paying for it. They're using open standards. As I mentioned, they're working on their file sync and share standard specifically that they've helped build, but they're using other open standards in there. And then as I mentioned earlier with the enterprise stuff, they are using business contracts in order to pay for the company and pay for the employees they have and pay for that organization. There's also just a lot of people working on it in their free time. They have a lot of different projects, very active. If you'd like to participate, they actively looking for people to come in and help with the code, with documentation, with a lot of different things. They're changing, so they constantly need to update their documentation. Like many other free software projects, the documentation is available in a lot of different languages. So that's actually the place. I've had a couple of commits that were accepted, a couple that didn't because they were redoing things, but they were documentation. It turns out when you've got Germans writing English, there are certain grammatical changes that might be necessary in order to properly get that. And those made it really easy to get in a couple of bug reports, right? And then I've skipped over the history quite a bit. And the main reason for having this in here is for that last line. We'll get to that in a second. So Nextcloud started in Tübingen, Germany. And as it turned out, it started like a year after I left Tübingen, Germany. So if I had just hung out longer, I could have been in the ground floor. But Frank Karliczek and others, he's the person a lot of us see, but he's not the only person that started that. Started working on what became known as OwnCloud. With OwnCloud, they decided to go through and accept VC money in order to pay the company. That was what everybody thought back in the day. Oh, you need to take your VC money, and so you get cash, and you could do business stuff. And then the VC was requiring them to be open core, so that some of their product was available as free software, and some of it wasn't. And Frank and others did not like that. They wanted to be a free software project. That was what they'd started to build. That's what they wanted to have. They did want to have a business behind it so that they could continue working on it. But they didn't want to be open core. And at some point, a dozen or so of them got frustrated and basically decided to quit OwnCloud and fork the project and start a new project. And that became Nextcloud. When they first did it, they expected it would take a few months before they had a fork that was ready, because they had to take out the proprietary bits or replace them with functional pieces so that they would have a functional tool. As it turns out, I think they had it done in 30 days or so. If you want to fact check me, go watch this talk. So Frank was here a few years ago. I think this was Scale 19. No, 17X. It's been that long, wow. But he did a great talk on why I forked my own project in my own company. So he was the CEO of OwnCloud. He quit, started a new company that, as I say, became Nextcloud. And he goes through the ideas behind that and why he wanted a free software tool and wanted a free software-based business. I highly recommend the talk. It was great when I got to see it while he was here. And I've gone back and watched it a couple times as well. Not recently, but I'm going to watch it. But he can give you much better detail about all that than I can, because he was there. All right. And also, before I get in that, so he also followed that up with another talk about why free software licenses are good for business. So it's not Nextcloud related per se, but it's part of how the company is, Nextcloud GmbH, how the company is doing well. And I really recommend seeing that as well. He's got a great perspective. He's been doing a free software-based company for a decade plus and has a lot of experience in that. And again, he chose to fork towards freedom instead of forking towards open core or proprietary altogether. All right. Places to find me. We're done a little bit early, so there's plenty of time for questions if anybody wants. I'm on Mastodon. We talked about Fediverse. There's a couple places to find me. I'm also an IRC, although mostly lurking nowadays. And then I have a Jekyll static site, static HTML site that I've set up. So you can go see my other talks. This talk and the slides will get up there eventually, probably not for a few days because I'm going to be off keyboard for a while. And then other talks that I've given. And my blog's up there as well. All right, and then thank you for coming. Hope you're enjoying Scale. And then credits. The Pepper and Carrot, I mentioned that cloud came from Pepper and Carrot, great webcomic that's also free software based and stuff. There is the URL for Frank's talk. And then Open IT Store is the company I'm using for hosting. Nextcloud has a podcast that's fun. And informative. And then Jupiter Broadcasting. This is not Nextcloud related per se, but Jupiter Broadcasting has a self-hosted podcast where they talk about running your own services. And they actually do, as far as a topic that shows up recurring, is more Home Assistant than Nextcloud, but they also cover Nextcloud a lot. But if you're interested in running your own services, that is a great podcast to listen to. All right, and then any questions? Yes, Allison.
I'm curious about how you're managing these accounts on your phone and your PC. Do you have clients provided by Nextcloud, or is it all just browser-based?
Good point. I should mention the fact that I have clients. So in F-Droid, I presume it's in the Google App Store as well, but I don't get things from there. So in the F-Droid repo, I can go through and install the Nextcloud clients. So I have a general Nextcloud client that allows this sync. That's using the DAV5X client, I think, for doing the web DAV portion of it. So it's using that for the underlying transfer protocol. Again, by using a standard, you can work with different tools, right? So they're using that, and then syncing. The default is to allow you to sync the pictures and videos and your phone book. You can also then add the notes thing for syncing notes and the one for tracking your phone. They've also got a plugin for Deck. I don't use it for my phone, but it's there. So there's a half dozen different applications that they've got available for Android. I don't know what they have on the other thing because I've never touched those. Although I've seen them talk about it, so I'm presuming they've got clients for those as well. And then you could use a web interface, right? The main thing I use is I do most of the stuff on the desktop. That's where I'm not working on the things while I'm walking around and doing stuff. So I tend to be, I finish work and I start working on free software conferences without moving. So I do most of my stuff through the web interface on a desktop. There's also a desktop client for syncing. I don't know about other things because I just haven't looked. I just use the web interface at that point. Okay. Any other questions? Richard? Oh, actually, the mic's back there, so we'll start there.
Sorry. About calendars, do you use them at all? Like, is it somewhere where I can just thinking from my house or use like wife work calendar, kids calendar, my thing?
Mm-hmm. Good point. Actually, something I need to add here, because calendars weren't working for me properly for a long time, but in the last few months, I finally figured out part of it was when you add a calendar, access to a calendar to an account on the phone, you have to go back into that WebDAV thing and say, by the way, sync this as well. So it wasn't seeing those extra calendars. So I have set up a calendar for my conferences, so I can keep track of all those without spamming the calendar for my family. I've got a calendar for keeping track of family stuff, and so I've got a half dozen different calendars I'm using so I can separate them, and I can share them. Back to what Allison was talking about with the different accounts. So I have a main account that owns the calendars, and then I can share them with other accounts in my system, so that those devices can then get to them. And again, I can share them read-only, or I can share them read-write. So if I don't want, the data might be in my phone, but at least they're not messing with it or whatever, I can make it read-only so that it's available there. For instance, like for the conference stuff, I'll share that read-only to the family so they don't accidentally go through and delete conferences that I was trying to go to and I forget about them. But for me, then I'll make it read-write so that I can go through and do updates. All right. But yeah, thank you for the question because I forgot to add that.
This is really just an addition to your resources, but they have a very active YouTube channel. And just about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, they posted a 3-part series on getting started with writing apps. So if you have your own integration projects or ways to extend this, it's really nicely put together. The first one is how to set up your little dev environment, and then they walk you through 2 different examples of how to integrate them.
Okay, I will have to go through and look at that because that would be awesome. Any other questions?
Are you doing your email through Nextcloud? And if you are, how are you dealing with, like, if it doesn't come from Google or Microsoft, it basically gets flagged as spam?
I'm not using that. I've been running my own email since before Google existed. So I have no idea how it works elsewhere because I've never gone anywhere else for it. This host I had did not have email set up properly, so I couldn't get notifications. They fixed that recently, so I'm getting notifications and stuff, but it's not something I've needed. So, and by the way, coming up, so not only, if you got questions, but the other thing is if you're using Nextcloud, for raise your hands, how many people are actually using Nextcloud? Okay, we got a few people. If you're using Nextcloud for something that I haven't mentioned, or you're interested in a feature that I haven't mentioned, we've got a little bit of time. Does anybody have any other questions, uses?
They have a ton of apps, but one of my favorites is they have an app called External Site, where in that row of apps, you can have any other service you're using, and it appears in a frame inside, just like all the other apps do. So that's kind of my go-to for everything else that's not in there yet. If I can't integrate it and build it inside, I can bring it in so my clients have one cohesive environment with all the services we use without having to go outside and hunt it down.
Okay, that's awesome. Can you get that to where it shows up for updates and stuff in the dashboard? Do you know?
Well, the external app is the external service, but
Yeah.
all this really does is provide an icon with a label, and the link to it embeds it in the
Just
frame.
embeds it in the frame. It's not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so by itself, that app needs very little in the way of updating, and it can't get whatever that is. But basically, it just punches a nice hole in the whole display area, brings those apps in, so you've got all your workspace together with, if you're using something primitive like Trello, although I prefer Deck, or whatever it may be, then you can bring it into one place. And even better, if they have OAuth in both directions with Nextcloud, so it can be both the provider and you can log into other provisions. So integrating with other services you may need is kind of a breeze with the external app.
Okay, cool. And by being able to bring in an external service. So for those of you that just, when you're using cloud service and you're like, where are the ads? Well, you can bring in the ads if you want to bring in the ads. They won't be as personalized because you're not giving them access to your data. All right. Any other questions, comments?
You said you were using this on an Android phone, right?
Yeah.
Are you doing that without using the Google Framework services? Because Android without it's kind of miserable.
Yeah, I'm getting from F-Droid, so it's not going through Google at all in order to do that. All the apps I've installed for that are in there. Now, the Google apps, especially those that you can't delete, still have access to the data as well, but I'm going through and doing Nextcloud. My goal is to get less and less of the Google parts on there and more of the free software parts and private cloud stuff. All right? Anything else?
The next step would be for somebody ambitious to go through and create open source competitors to, say, meetup.com. I mean, all the pieces are here if somebody would want to do it. And I think there are other similar proprietary services that there probably are building blocks to replace them
We have
through a service like this.
two of those, actually, as it turns out. Mobiazone is from Framasoft. It's a French company, the company behind PeerTube. And when I say company, it's again, like Nextcloud. It's mostly people donating their time, free software, but they do have a few employees and engineers working on it. So they've created Mobiazone. I think that's how I say it. I'm not certain that's how they say it. But the goal for that is that it's going to be part of the Fediverse, so that it's interacting with other services as well. And then you also have, I'm spacing on the name. Gettogether.community, thank you, which is also working towards Fediverse stuff. Been a little bit slower in development on that. There was a bunch initially, and then it's kind of petered out a little bit. I use Get Together for my presentations and stuff, and then I'm trying to finally take time to start playing with Mobiazone as well. But the nice thing is, again, we're working as a community. We want to work with other services. We're not trying to take some proprietary service and keep somebody in our service all the time. If there's another service that accents what we're doing, let's work with them, because we're trying to build the tools for the people to use, not the tools to spy on the people. All right? Turn us into products. All right. Anything else? Okay, we're about at time, so I'm going to go ahead. Oh, yeah.
Is this like can this work as a NAS server, like where you can store like your family pictures?
Yeah, so you can use it to upload and sync files and bring them up there. I really should put this in here as well. By the way, this is not a backup of everything. This is a cloud service for your system. But if you want to make sure that you've got long-term storage and that in there, you need to make sure you have a decent backup solution. Nextcloud does do backup, so if I delete stuff, it stays in the service. But like, for instance, if this company that I'm hosting through ceases to exist tomorrow, which has happened a bit in the last few years, or they get hit by an asteroid or something like that, then all of my data that's in that location also disappears. I haven't played with it, but Nextcloud has been working on sync to sync, so I could have multiple providers. But again, it's still not quite backup. So make sure you're keeping, if you're wanting to make sure you've got archival, thinking about that, and maybe you can make it work for what you want, but make sure you're contemplating how it works and how your data is stored in that realm. But as far as keeping your data up, yeah, I've got all of our pictures going up in there so my family can get access to it. That's where I've got to provide customer support. It's not working how they want it. They do different things differently than I do. So I've got to help them adjust it to the way they want it to work. All right. Okay, well, we're about at time, so I want to go ahead and finish out with saying, again, thank you for coming. Thanks for coming back to Scale. It's great to be back in Pasadena. Starting in about 5 minutes, I will be running very fast. Well, no, I will be shambling moderately quick over to, what room are we in? Ballroom C? I think Ballroom C for the career BOF. So we are going to be doing speed networking, or speed pitches. So come in. It's like an elevator pitch for a startup, but instead of doing the elevator pitch, it's the answer to, during an interview for, tell us about yourself. Get a chance to practice that 30, 60-second pitch about what people want. And that will be this evening. And then Murph is doing the Fediverse BOF at 9 o'clock in Ballroom B. And then tomorrow, right across the hall here, we have a whole bunch of stuff going on for Open Source Career Day. Please come back. We've got great talks. We have, as I say, counseling sessions where you can come in and get resume reviews, re-careering, career guidance. And then we'll also have Nish, who is going through and doing headshots for us. And what he's asking for is actually for you to donate to a Ukraine Relief Fund, if you want to help with that. Did you have something to add? Nope. Just, if you did, I want to make sure I got it. Okay. Well, thank you. Everybody have a good night. Oh. Because nobody would remember. Game night.